I wanted to make a quick video discussing the status of this massive archaeological discovery, and the status of my channel and the direction that it's going to be going. And also, I would like to briefly touch on my thoughts or opinions about this 3-Eye Atlas situation and potentially disclosure that's coming. I actually have a prediction, so stick around. First of all, we need to discuss this discovery update. My channel is based around a discovery that I've made, a fairly massive archaeological discovery. Essentially, it's just the culture that spanned the world who's responsible for all these megalithic building sites. So we know who it is, or at least we know what it looked like. I created a channel around it based off of it. And I ended up early on kind of morphing back to Instagram. I started Instagram and then I made my YouTube videos that of the findings that I found initially. And I kind of stepped away from YouTube to some degree for a time and focused on Instagram. And that might be how you found me, actually, because I blew up to some degree on Instagram. It was like 20,000 followers in a week or something wild. And it's not because I'm good at content or good at what I'm doing here. It's because what I found seems to be legit, and if you spend enough time choking down my awful content to see the truth of it, you can really determine, hey, like, this dude's got something. And that's ultimately why I'm here. I'm here because it was so compelling for myself that, if there is a creator, I don't know that I could stand in front of him and say, oh yeah, I didn't tell anybody, sorry. Like, it's such a big deal, and it's so profound to our history and everything that's been going on that I'm compelled to do what I'm doing. So being a content creator is not my first priority. My first priority is to convey this message to you. And so if you've discovered this channel strictly on YouTube, there's more information. Actually, there's more discoveries. There's more things kind of going on behind the scenes, and I lay that out rather pretty well on Instagram. But I'm trying to play catch up on YouTube to actually get everyone up to speed over here where we're at with things. And you guys pretty much have everything up to my Italy trip. And I went to Rome after that and found some really interesting things. And then another trip to Arizona, where I ended up just confirming a bunch of stuff. It was actually pretty awesome. But ultimately, there's information that's available related to this discovery that is not here on YouTube yet. So I'm doing my best to get everything updated. But as far as the channel, well, I guess, so the discovery, ultimately, the updates are, there's more stuff. There's a lot more stuff, so much stuff that I'm sitting on stuff because I've been approached by somebody, not negative, not approached. I've been approached by an individual who is interested in working with me on a larger project. And so in light of that, I've decided to sit on a lot of the major revelations that I have. I've got big stuff, bigger than what I've already shown, and it might make more sense to redirect my focus on other things. So if you followed me from Instagram, you've noticed that Instagram's kind of ticked off a little, not ticked off, but toned down a little bit. And that's because of this project. So just so everyone understands, I'm doing my best to work on another large project on top of this information and providing it to you on YouTube and Instagram. So that's kind of why things have slowed down, if you've noticed, or if you're wondering why I don't turn out stuff all the time. The other thing is I don't know how to do content. I'm still stuck in that, you got to polish everything, and it seems like that doesn't really work that well. Spend 10 million years on a video and it gets one view and you're just fed up. I'm really only here to convey this message. Ultimately, that's, I'm not trying to make a buck as much as I'm trying to tell the world the truth. I'm retired military. I had already made my plans and they didn't go the way I thought. I thought I was going to be doing my hobbies, and I guess this kind of is a hobby, but not one that I wanted to be doing full time. But here we are. So I'm doing this. I'm trying to make it a priority now, because for me, the information is just so important. So the future of this channel, I'm going to be trying to turn out more videos. They're going to be, I would say less quality, or I'll spend less time on them because it's going to be more about the information. So I mean, you've already choked down some pretty terrible content that I made early on. Like, it's all terrible in my opinion. Some of it's pretty cringe. I get it. But at the same time, just don't hate when I just make a video and don't edit shit and put it out. That's probably what's going to start happening because I need to focus the majority of my attention on this project. Because if this project is successful, then it's a done deal. You can't. Genie's not going back in the bottle. And on top of that, actually, um, the Alien Carvings channel, the individual running that channel, we've been discussing doing some interviews and some live streams together. So if you notice you haven't seen this space before, it's because I'm trying to set up a new space to record. Previously, like the way to do it is your closet. Like it's completely dark, can't hear anything. The audio is dope. It's like you got your own sound barrier built in, but it's difficult to set up in the closet every time and you know make videos regularly, or even do live streams or interviews with individuals. So I'm creating another space to do that more regularly. So expect more content, but less quality. I just want to try to get this information out. There's just so much other information besides the new interesting things that I'm sitting on that you guys can go out and verify all of this by yourselves. Like, you do not need to believe me. Nobody should believe me. It is so simple and so abundant. Like, everything I'm saying is like, you will be able to go down to the stream and see it. It's there. So think about that for a second. If this culture existed that spanned the world, and it was so big that the evidence is everywhere, and you guys can pretty much go down to your local stream and find it. That means that, okay, maybe we had a peak civilization kind of thing, or whoever was here before, they were ruling over a very different world, and that's really what seems to be the case. I've found this carving at my local park that looks like, I didn't know what when I found it, and then I later discover a photo that essentially matches it. I made a whole video about it. I just got the dreaded storage is full. I was like on a flow in my storage, full, whatever. Anyways, back to what I was talking about. Essentially, you find this carving and match it to the photo, and it's like, okay, well, does that imply that these things are real? Okay, well, if these things are real, it looks like they presided over a massive civilization. And I find negative things related to that civilization. It seems to be just a continuation, or even the origination of the spiritual methods that were discovered when the colonists arrived to the New World. What they were doing to individuals, unaliving people for spiritual reasons, was also common among this pre-flood culture. And so I can completely understand why, anybody who cared from a deep angle would want to keep this information under wraps if these individuals ever chose to come back. So when you think of things like this 3-eye atlas thing, and you wonder about it, it's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I realized that it was true. I realized that these things were real, and if they existed before, they still exist today, and they'll come back. And if they do what they did before, then we have hell to face. They are not benevolent. They are not positive. So as these things unfold in front of you and they tell you this or that, just remember, whatever they were presided over a civilization that wasn't cool, and that we would generally look down on morally. So it doesn't matter, what spaceship or what species or whatever. Half the time it's going to be BS, and in reality, it's some kind of lie. Nobody's going to show up and be like, hey, we enslaved your people and oppressed them and did all kinds of horrible things. Nobody's going to show back up to a civilization they once conquered and tell the truth. So whatever you're going to get that comes out of this situation is probably not going to be accurate. That's for damn sure. But I think it's true to some degree. And what I mean is something's about to happen. Is that thing a spaceship floating out in the, I don't know. For all I know, it's like, the 4D creature smashing his finger on the 2D chalkboard. I don't know if you know that analogy, but like, the different dimensions, you appear differently in the lower dimension, So for all we know, it could be some creepy being. It's like, hey, let's make them all think a spaceship's coming. And he like smashes his finger on the chalkboard. Look, it's a spaceship. Like that's literally could be that. Nobody says that they have to tell us the truth. Our leaders or whatever these things are when they show up, if they show up. My opinion is something's going to show up. And I think that something 2027, one of the things that, kind of has put me in this situation to find all these things is like, I'm a pattern guy. I notice patterns a lot. And I've really noticed that 2027 pops up everywhere, whether it's government, whether it's pop culture, whether it's, whatever. 2027 is going to be special for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm willing to bet now that the way that we've been eased into things, the way that, UAPs are ramping up and so I've literally seen 3 in the past year. And I grew up thinking, oh, I'll never see anything like that in my life. And now it's almost like a regular occurrence, that shouldn't be realistic. That shouldn't be a thing, but it is. And we just don't bat an eye to it because we've been slow rolled into this mess. So here we are, about to get fed a big, supernatural sandwich of whatever the hell, who knows what's about to come around the corner. But I can tell you, it's not positive. It's not a good thing. It's not from a positive source or a loving, benevolent being. It's going to come from negativity. And so briefly, I just wanted to share those thoughts with you. It's like, as you guys get excited about this and hope for all the interesting things, it's like, be careful. Be careful, because what's coming around that corner is usually not good. In fact, I'll leave you with this. There's a podcast called Hardcore History. And if you've never heard of it and you like history, I highly suggest you check it out, especially the World War I series. It's like, 10 hours or something wild. But it is just so riveting and informative. It's one of the best ones I've listened to. And in that, he essentially starts out by telling the story that the French, the European powers hadn't been in a battle, in a war for 100 years. And so the French showed up, on the battlefield in their pretty blue uniforms, ready to line up against, Napoleon's army, essentially. Like, that's how they were still thinking. But they were met with a Maxim machine gun, and they were all just, turned into meat grinder. It was a massive meat grinder. And they didn't see it coming because they couldn't fathom what the technological advancements would do under those circumstances. And let's be real, we're, 80, 90 years from the last major war where we got to see all of our technology unleashed on the world. What do you think is going to happen when it's time to play the game again? We are going to look like the French soldiers in our pretty blue uniforms, lining up against the Maxim, because we just do not understand what is about to come down the pipe. So, as you move forward, if I had to suggest anything, and I don't like talking about my own personal thoughts and opinions because I want to be judged on the factual evidence of this discovery, because that's really all I care about. But as you go forward and you get excited about these things, just be careful, because whatever they're selling you, especially if it's like, oh, that's what I want it to be, then definitely be careful. Be careful what you wish for. Because, like I said before, if there is no God, we're pretty much